Last week we talked about slowing time down, but this week, let's go ahead and talk about reversing it. Alright, so in my scene here, I just simply have a static body for the ground, and I have a character body, or if you're in version 3, kinematic body. I still prefer the word kinematic body myself, but we just have that set up with the player. It's got a sprite, they have collision shapes, and I have a label that shows on screen when I'm rewinding, just to make it clear for you guys. Alright, so you can use this with any of your character bodies. You can use the same method, and if you want to use a rigid body, you'd have to go a little bit differently, just because rigid bodies move and act differently, but it's still the same concept. Alright, so starting off, I have up here is just my movement variables, so things like gravity, speed, jump, and all that. So what we're going to need is we're going to need a variable to know whether or not we are currently rewinding or not. So rewinding or is rewinding, whatever, just make it a Boolean, false by default, and it'll be true when we do rewind. Replay duration or rewind duration, those kind of names are probably what you're going to feel like using here. And this is how long we're going to be able to rewind. So the last 3 seconds, last 5 seconds, 10, whatever you want to go ahead and set up. Now, personally, I feel 3 seconds is a lot. 5 seconds would probably be the most I would ever do. But that's just my personal preference. You can have your own. And rewind value. This is a dictionary, of course, and these are the different properties that we're going to be keeping track of when we rewind. So we're going to be keeping track of the position, rotation, and I'm going to track the velocity just so that we still have that. Now, these are going to be any of these features or properties or statistics or whatever that you want to track when rewinding. Now, the reason why we're using things like position, rotation, and that is because what is rewinding? What are we doing when we rewind time? Well, we're going with our previous position, rotation, etc. of the last X amount of time, in our case 3 seconds. Alright, so we need to keep track of those numbers. And if we're going to go backwards, we need to play that backwards. Right? So we need to go from the end and play up to the front. So instead of play index 0, then 1, then 2, we're going to play index 50, then 49, then 48, then 47, etc. Right, so we're going to go backwards. So anything that you want to track, this is where you're going to put it. You're going to stick it inside of your dictionary here. For our player, all we're going to need is position. I have rotation here. If you wanted to keep track of whether or not your sprite was flipped, then you could have a true-false array that you're keeping track of in here as well. Again, whatever you want to track is completely up to you. Inside of my input, I just have my rewind button, which I'm just using the UI cancel, which is escape. And I'm making sure that I'm not already rewinding. So if I press my rewind button and I'm not currently rewinding, then I'm going to use my rewind function. All right. And that rewind function is simply going to turn rewinding Boolean to true. I'm going to disable my collision. That way we don't have any issues when it comes to moving around. Now, if you wanted, you could try leaving your collision intact and maybe try and put something on your hazards. For example, if you're rewinding, maybe it gives you health back. If you're not rewinding, it hurts you. Maybe you can kind of put some kind of conditions in there like that. But to keep things simple, I'm just going to disable the collision so we don't have any issues. We don't have any, nothing can get stuck anywhere. We don't have any accidental damage being calculated back in again. And then I'm just showing the label, which of course you guys wouldn't have. So that just leaves us with the actual rewinding. and keeping track of our information. So let's track our information first. So with that, it's going to be in our physics process. Now, inside of if we are rewinding, then we're going to use our rewind computation. Right? And that's the function we'll get to, which is going to do the actual rewinding part for us. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But if we're not currently rewinding, then of course we have our movement going on there. So I can just close that down. And here's the actual part where we track our information. So we're going to say the replay duration times engine.get frames per second. Right? So if our replay duration is 3 seconds and our game is running at 60 frames, then we're going to get 180 values put in here. And we're going to check if that number is equal to the size that we have inside of position. We don't have to use position. We could use rotation if we wanted to, or velocity. It doesn't really matter here, as we're just using these to get ourselves a number. So we're saying if we have, in this case, if it's running at 60 frames over 3 seconds, if we have 180 positions inside of this array, then it is full, right? So if that's true, then we're going to go in. So if that's true, then we're going to go in to all of our keys, right? So for keys in here, it doesn't really matter. We're just getting basically all of our keys out here. And we're going to pop front. So we're going to remove index 0, basically, and take it out. And that way we have one short, right? So now we're at 179 on our next frame, and we'll be able to add a new position in there for that frame. Hopefully that makes sense. We're basically saying if we have enough information and we're not rewinding yet, remove the old stuff so we can put the new stuff in. All right, and of course, after that, outside of that if block, we're actually gonna add in our information. So in rewind value position, we're going to append our global position. And we're going to do the same thing for our rotation, append our current rotation, and we're going to do the same thing with velocity. And you can do this with any stat that you want to keep track of here. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and close that function. And now for the actual rewinding portion here, our rewind computation. I have 2 temporary variables here for our position and rotation. And really, I should put these in as vector 2 and rotation. I believe that's a float that we get back from that. I could be wrong, but I guess we'll find out if it errors out. But with that, all we're doing is we're going to, for a position variable, we're going to get the position array inside of our dictionary, and we're going to get pop back. So we're going to get the newest entry, right? The newest piece of data. That way we can work from the back, right? So we can start at the last index, take that one, remove it, and keep grabbing that last one. And we're going to do the same thing with our rotation. All right, so basically what we're doing, if you found that a little hard to keep track of, right? So let's say we have these numbers here, right? We're basically going to grab 30 in this case and take it out. And then when we come back around for the next frame, we're going to grab 230 here, take it out. And then our next frame, we'll grab 18, take it out, and then we'll grab 59 and take it out until we have nothing left. So this way we're working backwards to give that rewind effect. All right, and all we're doing with that is we're assigning our global position equal to our position, our rotation equal to the rotation, and of course any other stats that you're tracking here. Now, if our rewind value position doesn't really matter here, since they all have the same amount, we're all popping them out. But we're just using position because why not? Doesn't matter. We use position and we'll check if it's empty, meaning we have nothing left to rewind. We're done rewinding at this point. Then we're gonna get our collision shape we can use call deferred, and basically we're going to set disabled back to false so that we can actually collide with things again. And I'm doing the same thing with my label. I'm just hiding it again. We can set our rewinding variable to false. Our global position is going to equal our position, right? The last thing that we have. Same with our rotation. Because remember, this is going to be empty. Once we pop out that last number, the array is empty. So if it's empty, this is why we still have to set these when it's empty. And then our velocity, we can go ahead and set that. And I'm setting that to index 0. Shouldn't really matter all that much which index we use, but we're using 0. And then we're just going to return and exit out of that function because we don't need to do this stuff again. Right? It wouldn't make any sense. And really, that's all we're doing. So, at its base, we're setting a time limit, keeping track of the stats that we want to rewind, such as our position and rotation. If we've already filled up all the data that we need based on how fast our game is running, then we will remove the old information and insert new information. Press rewind. We're going to set our player's position and rotation from the newest data going backwards to the oldest data. And all of that results in us being able to go ahead, play our game, run around. Doesn't matter. And as soon as we hit that rewind button, boop, here we go. And it goes back just that set amount of frames, right? The 180 pieces of data that we have, assuming your game is running at 60 frames again, for those 3 seconds. So there you go. There's how we rewind time. All right. Take care. Have yourselves a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next video.